Welcome, our dear friends from different parts of the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Human Rights Day. And we thank the UNEP Faith for Earth team for always striving to organize and create platforms for us to have different discussions in relations to environment, in relations to our faith, and also how we can be able to protect other aspects of human development as we continue in this journey. My name is Ashley Kitisia, and I welcome you. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, telling us your name, where you're joining us from, and also if there was something taking place in your country or in your city regarding Human Rights Day. Thank you so much. We have a couple of people joining. Very grateful to have you. I'm joining in from Nairobi. It's currently 6 p.m. and we had some activities regarding the femicide in Kenya. Great. So thank you so much. I see that we have started introducing ourselves. Please do utilize the chat function and also the Q&A function on the top of your screen, where you'll be able to share with us questions. We promise you that it's going to be a very fruitful 90 minutes, and we have a diverse range of speakers who will be coming on board to share with us on the topic of faith in action. Diverse ways to environmental and human rights protection. This is a webinar hosted in or with the Faith for Earth Youth Council in collaboration with the Children and Youth Major Group to the UNEP. And today we gather on a significant date, celebrating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted 76 years ago. As we reflect on these rights, we recognize the growing interconnection between human dignity and environmental stewardship. Before we dive in, I would like to share a quick note that the views expressed here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the positions of the United Nations Environment Programme or the Faith for Earth Coalition. Today's agenda will be exploring how environmental degradation impacts human rights. We will look at the financial and moral responsibilities of faith communities in climate action. We will highlight grassroots resistance to harmful projects like the East African Crude Oil Pipeline project in Uganda. And we will also explore and empower communities to uphold their right to a healthy environment. We will also have some time towards the end for Q&A. So please use the chat box function to share your questions. And you can also use the Q&A feature on the top of your screen to be able to submit those questions. And we will start by exploring the intersection of human rights and the environment. So as we face the triple planetary crisis, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, these crises are no longer just environmental issues. They are fundamentally human rights issues. They have been threatening livelihoods, health, and has been threatening future generations. Faith communities are uniquely positioned to be able to respond to these challenges, offering moral guidance, mobilizing grassroots action, and also utilizing the faith communities, the faith aspect that gives us hope, either entrenched in our practices or entrenched in our sacred texts that speak towards the importance of careful creation and how central that is to the human experience. This is Frederique Seidel, who works from the World Council of Churches, and she will share more about the financial responsibility of faith communities to combat climate injustice. Frederique, please take the floor, and thank you.
Hello, everyone, and happy Human Rights Day. My name is Frederique Seidel from the World Council of Churches, which represents about 500 million Christians in 120 countries. And before I start, well, you know, when I talk to young people, I like to show this picture of when I was 17. The climate change was not a secret. We knew exactly what was happening, and with other friends, we were organizing flash mobs in the streets in a church initiative alerting on global warming. So that is very long ago. And since then, the CO2 emissions have only continued going up a lot, as you can see on that graphic on the right hand. But today I will speak about why there is so much hope for human rights, despite what science tells us. In fact, here are some of the facts. As well documented by UNEP, we have exactly, by 2025, CO2 emissions must stop increasing according to IPCC report, and thereafter be halved by 2030 for a livable future. And the International Energy Agency tells us that there is enough fossil fuel out of the ground for the transition to renewables. But what is happening in terms of financial decisions is that, you know, in the last year, $7 trillion were invested in activities harming nature. And the investments in nature-based solutions only total around $200 billion. And this is why there is a lot of hope. Because, you know, these discrepancies between what should happen according to science and what's happening with financial choices is a kind of blind spot. It's not something which everybody is aware of. And for now, even we at the World Council of Churches, we have focused a lot on helping children, greening their churches, being heard in decisions about environmental protection. And it was the children themselves who told us, look, there's really something wrong, because whilst we are sacrificing our Fridays, sometimes missing school, often not doing the fun activities of the weekend, instead doing petitions for environment protection, well, while we do all this, your banks and pension funds are fueling global warming. And that's really not fair. This is why we have documented how many of our member churches were actually doing the right thing. And luckily, we found quite a number of them, such as the Church of Sweden, which already many years ago had told their bank, we don't want any of our money to be invested in fossil fuel expansion. As people of faith, we want to make sure that our investments are ethical. And they managed to achieve that. They actually now have not a single penny in fossil fuel expansion, and they are even making more higher interest rate than before. But there are still many who are not paying attention to that blind spot, which in itself has so much hope if everybody would look at the relationship with their bank. Another figure which is important to know is that since the Paris Agreement was signed, over $6.9 trillion were invested in that area which is most responsible for CO2 emissions increase, the fossil fuel area. And the girl you see here on the picture is Eliana Wanjiku from Kenya, who last year, when she was only 13, called us at the World Council of Churches and said, I really need help. We are a group of children. We want to meet the world leaders and urge them to make the right financial decisions. In fact, at that time, there was a big summit in Paris convened by Emmanuel Macron, a new global financing pact summit. And Eliana wanted me to help these children meet with Macron and the other world leaders. So at first I told her, well, we can try to help craft a statement, but meeting with Emmanuel Macron will really be impossible because it was only 2 weeks to go and a lot of security. Only heads of states were invited into that meeting. But we were there in Paris, and just to show you how much faith can achieve, Eliana prayed her way into the room where only heads of states were allowed into. So we all followed. So I was suddenly standing there in front of Emmanuel Macron, taking this picture, which you see on the left of Eliana, who was able to ask him to please pay attention to the children's letter, which had been drafted just the day before. But not only that, Eliana also organized a big conference on climate for children, and only by children, in Kenya last year. And we had facilitated this girl called Faith Sebwa, who is only able to speak with a sign language translator, to attend and speak. And she had so important messages about also the human rights of people with disabilities to be heard in environmental decisions, that then Eliana told me, look, we want that girl who is so impressive to please be part of the WCC delegation at the COP, the climate conference in Dubai. Again, I told her, look, this is not possible. We have no more places in that delegation. We have no funding. And also, well, it's just too late. But somehow, in a couple of days, somebody gave their slots to Faith. We found a very kind translator who agreed to work for free. And we did find the funding just to pay for the ticket. And here's Faith, who was our youngest member of the delegation at COP in Dubai, speaking about the human rights of people with disabilities when it comes to environmental decisions. So you see, for us, it is really essential to use the most powerful levers to protect human rights. And today, where all the funding, so much funding is going into the wrong direction, well, we need to mobilize everyone around that blind spot to stop investments into what most harms human rights. And in this work, we address not only the physical consequences of global warming, but also the moral injury to children. Because even just to understand what science says, I mean, some of you may have experienced it, it can create something called pre-traumatic stress syndrome. So just imagining what would happen to young people if we continue business as usual creates a mental health challenge. And we want to lift that far too heavy burden from children's shoulders. That's why we have developed, also with help from UNEP Faith for Earth, a so-called Save Children's Lives, Responsible Banking Survival Guide. And you can access it here through the QR code. In a nutshell, you will find here very vital information on how anyone who has some savings even if it's just $100 for, which for many is a lot, but it's an amount which, if you pay attention that that is not invested into fossil fuel, it reduces your impact on the environment far more than, for example, shortening the time of showers or waste management, which are all important, but much more effective and faster in reducing CO2 emissions is ensuring that we invest into renewable energies and not the areas which harm human rights. Yesterday, we also just launched another resource for churches and people of faith and partners to illustrate on the phenomenon of desertification what that means to pay attention to financial choices. So it may sound a bit surprising, but if you access this fact sheet, you will see how much can be achieved by talking to one's bank or pension fund to stop the root causes of desertification. Now we are also shifting gears and moving into a new arena for the World Council of Churches. And that is that we equip churches on how to use the law for intergenerational climate justice. There are some really groundbreaking developments, and some of them are led by young people like you who have been very smart to look at the people's right to a healthy environment. You may have heard about that, but since 2022, this is really also a very important reference, and who then have targeted either governments or companies to show that their right to a healthy future is not respected. So these lawsuits are very important because they accelerate the solutions into the right direction. There is even a case in South Korea, which is pending, where the lives of unborn children are put also into the picture of the courtroom. And you've probably heard about the European Court of Human Rights, which handled the Portuguese children's case, which as such was not successful yet. But the Klimaseniorinnen, a case from Switzerland, was very successful. And there's a lot to be built on from these existing lawsuits. What brings a lot of hope for human rights is also that the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child has done a lot of things in the right direction for protection of children through the recognition that the investments into fossil fuels are a harm to children's rights. What you see on the screen here is their concluding observation to the government of Switzerland, where they have been very explicit on the importance to shift away from these harmful areas which harm children's rights. And on the picture here at the right hand, you see Ridhima Pandey. She is one of the teenagers. Now she's a young adult. She's just turned 17. I met her in Rome not long ago, and when she was 11, she was part of those children who filed a complaint to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. That complaint was actually not successful in itself because they said you haven't exhausted your national remedies. But it is exactly that complaint which has motivated the Committee on the Rights of the Child to then develop the so-called General Comment 26 on children and climate. This is the new, really only from last year it exists. It's the authoritative guidance to governments on children and climate. And it's a game changer. Because if you do seek the protection of human rights, you can refer to this amazing General Comment 26, which also speaks very specifically about the role of corporations, including businesses, banks, pension funds. So it does show their responsibility to not harm children and future generations. And another breakthrough is the ecocide law. You may have heard of that. And there's a wonderful resource which highlights the ecocide law under the angle of the children's rights. At the World Council of Churches, we are about to publish a handbook for churches and for young people on how to use the law for intergenerational climate justice. And because of that blind spot, which I mentioned earlier, the fact that the banks and pension funds today get away with harming human rights through wrong decisions, we have in that handbook shown how to actually do these lawsuits with specific attention to financial actors. And as you see here on an overview, which was kindly provided actually by the law division in UNEP, one of these trends on how to do lawsuits about financial institutions is through the human rights angle. And there are a few of these cases underway, but many more should be happening to really move the needle and accelerate hope for children's future. So in the meantime, we have also undertaken something of more symbolic nature, so to speak. The World Council of Churches has made a request to the International Criminal Court to recognize that the disinformation on global warming is causing the death of many victims of global warming. And therefore, we've urged them for a legal reform to hold accountable those who are still actively promoting disinformation. A few months later, the International Criminal Court has announced that they will come up with an environmental crimes policy. So we have also immediately made a submission with input to that, where we've also urged for a recognition that investing in the current context into fossil fuel expansion is a crime against children, as there's so much evidence on the harms and deaths caused by the consequences. And now, most recently, actually last week, we have submitted a letter to the World Bank asking them to become a champion in the transition from fossil fuel into renewable energy finance. So here's an important quote by Archbishop Tutu, who said, "People of conscience need to break their ties with corporations financing the injustice of climate change." I've hesitated a bit in showing this quote because in the approach of our project, we don't want to break the ties with anyone. In fact, the project is, sorry, am I still showing the slides or? Sorry, I can't
They
see
just
anymore.
disappeared.
Okay. So it is actually to tell you that the project is not against anyone. It is about the acceleration of the change and about everyone's human rights. And so we also give the decision makers who still unfortunately take the wrong decisions a chance to get away as victims of disinformation. And we have had really very moving testimonials of CEOs who have admitted that so far they were kind of clinging on to the hope that all this would not be human-made and that maybe it was not really true. But this is not possible anymore with so much evidence from science. And so we try to collaborate with everyone to simply accelerate the solutions for the protection of human rights. And it's maybe to close the presentation, I want to share a quote which I recently heard, which I find very compelling, which is, "If children are not at the table, they are on the menu." And I think this is so true. And not only children, but young people. I mean, you need to really be heard and involved in decision decisions affecting the environment. So I encourage all of you to collaborate in any decisions which can help to accelerate human rights through the protection of the environment.
Thank you so much, Frédérique, for the rich sharing and the amazing work that you're doing, and also the World Council of Churches. There has been a lot of echoes of thanking you and celebration within the chat, and also the way that your approach is open towards working with diverse stakeholders on various issues that look at finance, looking at divestment, but also looking at more involvement really of different generations. Thank you very much. And on that topic, we do have a question from one of our listeners, and this is Victor Karanja, who has asked, what strategies have proven effective in engaging young people in faith-driven environmental protection efforts, particularly in regions like Africa? Please, if you have 2 minutes to address this, would really be grateful, also knowing that you are pressed for time. Thank you.
Yeah, so a very important question, and there are across Africa amazing examples which we use to inspire other regions. One I mentioned, it's to give support to children like Eliane Wanjiku or Faith Sedwa, who are just taking the initiative to themselves build capacity. So they go into schools, they explain the situation to children, things which should be in the curriculum, but which are not. They tell everyone around them about it to alert on the urgency of environmental solutions. But I would say that in many places, we need really high-level attention to the talents of children and young people, because it's not everywhere that they are really at the table at all. We also hear from many children that they're even surprised when they're asked for their opinion, because in some cultures, this is not at all the case. It was also documented recently by the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child that access to justice is not at all easy for children in the African context. So this is why also in the Legal Action Project, which I briefly mentioned, we are considering a class action, which would make it easier for those who feel a bit like at risk in speaking out in their context to do it together with others from north, south, west, east. And so to do something together globally and lift the heavy burden from those who are in contexts which they cannot speak out freely. I hope that answered your question. But on our webpage, you will find also many stories of good practices of including like young people strategies that are really effective and making them part of the decision making of anything that affects their lives.
All right. Thank you so much, Frédérique, for that answer. Yes, it does answer the question, and we appreciate you and your time for coming to speak with us and share with us. Truly, it was very rich and superb presentation, and we do look forward to seeing and collaborating with WCC and also you, as well as the different avenues of engaging us in environmental and human rights protection. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And now we will have Stephen Kezamutima. Stephen, you are welcome to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, as I've mentioned earlier, I want to speak on behalf of Franciscans or faith groups. What faith approach do we have in connecting these human rights violation that are related to environmental degradation? As a people of faith, we need always to have guidance from our scriptures. And here, I wanted to mention from the Catholic social teaching, the human dignity. and which is one of principles in the Catholic social teaching, but also in Laudato Si, I had mentioned about this paragraph 51, which I invite everybody to take time and they read and they reflect on these issues of ecological debt, so that we get to understand what is happening to our common home in our countries, especially in the global south, where the extractions of minerals still going on, oil extractions and the gas and the coal mining, it's still on, but the impact that it leaves with our land and our people in the communities is that one that is mentioned and that we see in the realities, especially the people who lose their livelihoods, young people who lose their future, women who lose their resources that they use for their livelihood and their families. So I want to just to mention, or even though I know one speaker will talk about this project of ECOP, to show that not only ECOP, but where all this fossil fuel extraction is going on, or gas, or mining, the big land that is taken by these projects and that cause eviction and already evicting people from their land, a land that they have invested in, a land that they've been, maybe it's a land of heritage. So people are directly affected from there because they lose orientation, they lose future. And that's where they produce, you know, or especially in Africa, where we are operating as an office of JPIC Franciscans Africa. The people, majority, live in the rural area, live with agriculture, and land gives almost everything that people need in terms of food. Even water is found in our land. Even when they want to educate children, they produce food, or they make sure it's out of land that can get resources so that children can be really educated. So this is one of human rights violated currently by multinationals in our countries in Africa, where oil and the gas and the coal mining is going on, and it's affecting people now at various dimensions. I want also to mention that when these projects are happening in our countries, we have the accidental impact like oil spills that affect now, pollute our water that our communities, some communities that are still poor and maybe living around lakes and rivers with fishing, and then you find the water has been polluted, biodiversities in marine area have been affected, and you find people are drinking the same water, cooking with the same water, washing and bathing the same water. And here we cannot deny the impact on health, especially for children. We can imagine also a household, like the water that people drink, and the cases in Nigeria and some other countries in South Sudan are clear. We have testimonies of mothers who have been having impact on their reproductive system, like miscarrying, issues of cancers, pneumonia, issues of respiratory health. So on health, it is really something serious. And also, we cannot forget about other biodiversities and the animals that we need also in our ecosystem. When the forests are cut down, and also with purpose of maybe taking up some resources from forests, that we cannot deny the species of some plants or trees that also are going extincting because of these projects that are happening. But I want to mention also something very important in countries where these projects are taking place, like in DRC, in South Sudan, in Somalia, and the other countries like Central Africa, where there is extraction of these resources that we are talking about, especially oil and gas. There are militarization, militias, but there is also presence of these multinational companies that are coming from these superpower countries, and they find communities do no longer have their land or their home, despite their poor way of life. You find this superpower present in that area, causing lack of peace, so that they continue extracting these resources. That's why we hear eastern part of DRC never have peace because of mineral resources, because of oil extraction in Virunga National Park. So when we are talking about this, remember this war, this lack of land that is causing eviction. People end up becoming IDPs or refugees in other countries. And now we've seen that people are living in refugees, or some who are IDPs their countries end up becoming also victims of human trafficking, where people are promised jobs, fake jobs to be used, and because they don't have any option and they need a green pasture, therefore we find that this is a situation that may be some realities at the ground that people are not talking about. So as an office, what we've been trying to do with the brothers and the sisters that we work together, first of all, we've been able to create a movement in the countries because we are a regional office, and having movements that the people that we've trained and we form on advocacy, how they can take action in the countries where they are, to try at least to raise the voice, to raise a prophetic voice, because where these actions are taking, you know, there is oppression. People do not have opportunity and no freedom to speak, and this is also another right that has been oppressed. So here I'm showing you the campaigns that we are doing on awareness on human trafficking in a region called the Kajiado Counts here in Kenya, where we are based, and trying to do awareness in communities, because this Kajiado County is a county that has been really affected by the drought since 2022 and up to 2023. And Franciscans, with our congregations, together with the stakeholders, people of faith, interfaith, we've been going to give hope to people in the communities, to listen to them, to assist them with at least some needs that they have. And the sum of needs we find when the droughts or floods have hit in the community, people lack food, and these are basic needs. People lack water, people lack shade, and you find children can no longer go to schools. So as a people of faith, we've been working in a network to make sure we are able to provide those basic needs, the basic human rights for people, as we prepare to move from charity to sustainable justice. And as we are taking this action, I want to show you that in a place that was a drought for 2 years, where Maasai communities who are considered as indigenous in this Kajiado County and Kenya as a country, we took them, after assisting them, we took them now through some sessions of understanding what's going on, doing awareness to them.
So sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, how can shift, help them to shift from the way of life to change the style of life, since they are depending on the cattle only, and the cattle are died because of droughts. Now we can have agroecology, to take them through or training of doing sustainable agriculture so that they can also start living by other means, having more options. So we've come up with the Laudato Si Community Center in the midst of a community that was affected by droughts. And this center is helping the whole Isinya in Kajiado with all Masais learning for many actions that helps. But also we are having young people who are taking action with us in our network, in our schools and the congregations, calling, using different means and the social medias to call global leaders to adopt the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty that can give us opportunity of phasing out the fossil fuel projects so that we can adopt renewable energy in the communities as we continue doing the usual tree growing, cleanups, and other programs of promoting biodiversity. So faith action is key, driven by our faith, and we believe coming together as people of faith with the other religion, we can be able to put together the forces that we have and be able to support our communities, give hope. So hope is keywords that we use, but driven by action. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And please, we hope that you will stick around, and please also share in the chat the significance of the UPR review process, particularly looking at how to protect communities who are facing human rights and the role of JPIC and other NGOs in this process. We will now call upon our third speaker, who will dive deeper into the impacts of environmental and human rights violations, giving us a real-life example about the threats posed to his community because of a crude oil pipeline. I now welcome Bob Barije from the Stop EACOP campaign. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you so much. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Barije Bob, and I'm the head of activists that are campaigning against the crude pipeline in Uganda. We are basically organized, and we have students, student activists, especially from universities, Makerere and Chambogo. And we have civil society activists. These are activists that have seen it all, that have been there before. And their role is to guide, mentor, and see that we have the climate justice we deserve. We are basically campaigning against the construction of a crude oil pipeline. It's the East African crude oil pipeline. And this will run 900 miles from Kabale in Hoima, Western Uganda, to Tanga in Tanzania. So this pipeline is basically passing through biodiversity around Lake Victoria, wetlands, and the oil is going to basically be drilled in a national park, which is Murchison Falls National Park. So we have threat to the wild animals that are there. There is a threat to life where the people's land has been taken without proper compensation. We have had human rights violations where some people in that area, because of this oil, have lost their land and been put in a settlement camp, an internally displaced people's camp. So that's basically what we are campaigning against. And we have done everything. We have done research because the government basically did not give us access to their research. Everything around oil exploration in Uganda has become a secret, where even our members of parliament have been denied access to the agreements that have been signed. So we have done our independent researches. We have informed people. Basically, when this was beginning, people thought that this was a blessing, but we have been able to explain to them. And We have informed them of the dangers, and they have seen them themselves where they have been evicted without compensation. Their land has been taken. The wild animals, especially the elephants, have left the national park. And then we have the human-wildlife conflict where elephants have attacked people. People have attacked animals, and this has also affected their living, because in the beginning, because of this, people were living with the wildlife. So this time there is conflict. We have strategically litigated where people have, especially people who have been affected by this pipeline, have not been compensated well, and we have gone ahead to strategically litigate for them. For the activists that have been arrested, we have put our hands together and our resources that are available, and we have litigated on their behalf. We have protested, basically, in Uganda, because it's a resistance. We have a resistant government that came into power 38 years ago. They listen to when you wake up and speak, that's when they will listen to you. But this research and ETC, they wouldn't listen to us. Basically, those are the things we have done. We have faced challenges where we have, most of the activists have been arrested. Even today, we had our colleagues, the student activists, that were imprisoned on the 11th of November, that have been released from prison after 30 days. So we have been arrested. These students have been, me, myself, and other activists, we have been taken to a maximum prison with capital offenders, just because of our stand against this pipeline. We will do everything. We are gaining momentum. This Stop EACOP campaign began on a low note, but right now it is visible. We have gained momentum. We have been trusted, where even some government officials have given us crucial information of what is going on, and we have done it all. And this fight is about opposing a multinational project, specifically being funded by Total and other European banks. The Ugandan authorities think that when they own oil, they will be the next big thing in East Africa. So this is a fight of Goliath against David, but we have successfully been able to keep there. The faith has really put us together, and our faith in the future, like the previous panelist was talking about, the children and the faith. Like, we know that we must do this for our children, we must do this for ourselves. We don't have anyone to rely on, and we have done this. Basically, this year alone, I've been arrested 7 times, gone to prison a number of times, been to police, been to court, but none of the times have they convicted me or convicted our fellow activists in this line, meaning that we are doing the right thing. And our zeal to keep moving, to keep doing this, will take us miles. I hope
More
I've shared
power
enough.
to you, Bob. More power to you, and we really stand with you in solidarity. And we'd like to ask, what can or how can global advocacy complement grassroots action, particularly in your context?
Basically, when you look at our cause, if we did not have people that globally synchronize and have the same desire like we have, we could not have gotten the resources, because these when we are getting arrested, most of the time it's violent. The government does it violently so that they can scare away activists. So people have been injured. So that collaboration, that working together, has enabled us get resources to treat these activists in prison. We have the best lawyers in Uganda, and this has been able to, with this working together. So our amplification of our voices. We have a problem that in Uganda, most of these media houses fear, because they are regulated on annual basis by the Ugandan government. So you have the global network has been able to put out our voices, and this has enabled us. We feature more in the foreign climate news bulletins than we feature in Ugandan bulletins. And this has caused over 28 banks from Europe and America to say they will not fund this project. So we are happy, and we look forward to working with everyone, because at our grassroots, people have been scared. They cannot talk about this. So, but it's the global network that has enabled us to achieve all that we have achieved as a campaign.
Thank you, Bob, and also the Stop Hiccup campaign does have a website known as the stophiccup.net. And we thank you also for sharing the strategies of litigation and grassroots mobilization, but also the global solidarity and the work and sharing the stories of how the members of communities are standing up against this crude oil pipeline project. But also it is really sad to see that this resistance is met with even more suffering, more pain, and more injustice. And we do keep solidarity with you. We do keep solidarity with all those who are impacted by this project and similar. This is a case that cuts across from different parts of the world. And we really thank you also for joining us and sharing these aspects with us. I will ask that for our members who are listening in to share their questions using the Q&A feature, or also share them in the chat, and we will be able to keep on having a conversation with Bob also via the chat. Thank you so much, Bob. And we will now welcome our final speaker for today, and this is Michael Okem, and he is from Arusha, Ghana. He will discuss about empowering local communities and integrating faith-based approaches to protect the environment. Thank you so much, and take the floor, Michael.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashley. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of us, wherever we are. I believe we can all hear me from here.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Yes. We have heard from Steve, we have heard from Frederick, we have heard from Bob, and they have given us very, very beautiful presentations with respect to this important occasion that we are having today. And that is the reason why Frederick mentioned something, and I want to begin my presentation with that quote, that if the children are not at the table, then they are on the menu. And it is very important that we all, as faith communities, as young people that are standing for the environment, should arise for our rights. And as Bob is also doing, just imagine that we have 100 Bobs around. You can imagine the kind of good that our environment would be and all that. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And as Ashley mentioned, I'm Michael Ochem, and I work as a conservation project officer with Arusha, Ghana. And I'm also the lead person for the Turtle Ambassadors Initiative here in Ghana, where we are empowering young people in coastal areas to own their coastal resources and protect them. And my work also includes community-driven interventions like turtle protection and conservation, like habitat restoration and tree planting, like capacity building for women and young people in ecologically significant areas in Ghana. Example is the Lake Bosomtwi Biosphere Reserve and the Keta Lagoon Complex Ramsar site, the Mini Pomadi Ramsar site here in Ghana. Environmental protection is intrinsically linked with human rights, and it is one important thing we all have to know. If the environment is protected, it means that our rights are also protected. The right to a clean air, the right to a safe environment, the right to even the kind of food that we eat, the safe food that we eat is very, very much linked to the protection of the environment. And that is why it is important that all faith communities, all people must understand that the reason why we are enjoying the rights that we are enjoying right now is because we are protecting the environment that we are living in. And so environmental protection, as I mentioned, is very much linked with human rights. But I would want to also share a bit of the projects that we are doing. We are doing the community empowerment projects that we are, as Arusha Ghana, we are embarking on, and then we are implementing here in Ghana. That is making a lot of strides and impact when it comes to young people and then the environment. One of the key projects that we are doing here and implementing here in Ghana is what we call the dry season solar powered vegetable farm for women and young people within one of our transition zones here in Ghana. And the project is also meant to increase the food security capacities of women here in Ghana and the young people. It also has to do with climate smart vegetable farming, where communities will not be using what we call the inorganic poisons, as they call it, for their farming, but would use climate smart ways of agriculture. And this is also one of the ways to uphold the environmental integrity of the area. And that is what one of the things that we are doing. We are also doing what we call the pro-conservation and then the conservation of mangrove forest ecosystems also in Ghana. And this project has three main phases. One of the phases also has to do with sustainable livelihoods for communities. And I would mention that with the sustainable livelihoods, we are looking at climate smart agriculture. You know, in past times, people do their agriculture activities in whatever way that they think is good for them. But at the end, we know that it has a lot of bad and then detrimental impacts on the environment and even on their survival. And so that is also one of the key aspects of the project and what we did. Secondly, it also has to do with the right way of fishing, and that is because it's a coastal area, we took them through the right ways of fishing. And third also has to do with very good ways of processing. It has to do with handcraft trainings, and that is what we took the women through. And mind you, all these things are pro-conservation. It means that it is leading the environment in the right direction. It is upholding the integrity of the environment and not using the environment anyhow and all that. One of the things
Thanks,
that,
Michael.
yeah.
And how does this community empowerment, particularly on environment, contribute to the realization of human rights?
Thank you, Ashley. As I mentioned earlier, it is important that we know and we understand that human beings, the environmental integrity, environmental health is strongly linked with human rights. Now, in that we have the right to what? To breathe good air. We have the right to a very good environment. And the reason why we are surviving is because the environment is still existing. And it is one of the key things that we all must understand, that we are existing because the environment is existing. And all faith practitioners, all of us can testify to that truth. And so we in Arusha, Ghana understand this perfectly, and we understand that educating people and empowering people to hold their environment in high esteem, it would be a key step in protecting their rights, and it is very key, actually. And so that is what we must understand. You know, one of the key things that I would mention is a clear example here in Lake Bosomtwi, where I work, the Lake Bosomtwi Biosphere Reserve, where one time some people or individuals came in to set up a cage on the lake. That is where they feed. That is their source of livelihood. That is their source of existence. And so through empowerment and training, we came up and then we trained the youth and then we empowered them and they stood up for themselves and then went and then they took the cage off the lake, because one of the things that they were farming on the lake was an introduced kind of or species of fish which is more robust, that is the Niloticus, which is more robust and can destroy their livelihood and then their right to existence within the Lake Bosomtwi catchment. And so you see how empowerment really help these youths to arise for their rights when it comes to the Lake Bosomtwi and then their existence there. And so it is very key that we all understand this. Yeah. Actually, can I continue and then make some few points here?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. I would like to mention this. As we reflect on these achievements so far, what actions do we attribute to all the successful campaigns from the youth and then the faith leaders, the successes that we are having in Ghana? One of the things is that Arusha, we hold an annual program called COVACOP. That's a Community Evangelism, Health and Conservation Program. It is also kind of an environmental evangelism. Apart from preaching environment to them, we go into the schools and all that to also preach environment to the people. And what has contributed to all these successes? Number one is the strong partnership that we must build. All faith practitioners, all faith communities, and then people of the environment, advocates, must, as much as possible, build a very strong partnership with the people on the ground, the community people, and as much as possible, key stakeholders within landscape. And it is one of the things that is creating a lot of success when it comes to our advocacy here. And we have a community-centered approach. What we use is a landscape approach. And so we find ourselves as part of the people within the communities. We relate with them. We stay with them for long, and that is one of the approaches we use. And so bringing in any kind of ideas or things that would uphold the integrity of the environment and their rights to a healthy environment, they are able to adopt it within the quickest time. And it is very important that we around the world, or youths around the world, use the community-centered approach in our advocacy and in our environmental ways. The last thing I would also add is what I will call building the capacities of the youth and then the young people. And that is also a point I would also overlay on Frederick's point. The youth are the future generational decision makers. And so it is very important that in all our work in Arusha, Ghana, we add them, we incorporate them in every activity. And it is contributing to all the successes that we are seeing here when it comes to our work here. And so just to wrap up, human life and then environmental integrity is highly and strongly linked with human rights. And if we uphold a healthy environment, it means that we are automatically protecting our rights of existence, even on the earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate the intervention and the great work that is taking place in Ghana under your leadership and the leadership of Arosha Ghana, the inspiring faith initiatives that protect the local environment, but also empowering
Definitely.
communities to realize and actualize their inherent human rights. I
Yeah.
thank all the speakers for the very powerful insights and to our listeners for their very active engagement. We are almost getting to the tail end of the conversation. However, we do have some time to be able to listen and also be able to discuss about any pressing questions. And just at a glance at the Q&A section, we do have a question from Christopher Coutinho, who says that he wants to point out that the effects of the East Africa crude oil pipeline are not just the current immediate effects, but also the long-term effects that affect us all, both regionally and globally. Indeed, when we talk about climate action, we usually do it at a country level. So we try and address climate change at in our countries, in our microclimates, but then we're increasingly seeing that the impacts of climate change transcend our borders. And so if only one country is trying their best to address the climate crisis, it is not enough. It needs collective action, and it does not, and it means that we also need to uphold the principle of ensuring that we have common but differentiated principles and activities to be able to ensure that we can properly tackle the problem of the climate crisis. And so any crude oil pipeline being constructed still affects all of us, even though we may not be in the jurisdiction of the project. We have a question coming in about how can faith-based organizations drawing on diverse spiritual and cultural traditions effectively collaborate with governments, corporations, grassroots movements to create actionable solutions that simultaneously address environmental sustainability and the protection of human rights, particularly in marginalized communities. I'd like to invite Stephen to address this question for us.
Thank you so much, especially for the question from Osman. Yeah, it is really important because the faith groups, different religion, they have scriptures, they have guidance. There is what for Christians, there is what is said in the Bible that can guide them. There are verses that always guide them, but also there is a platform for homilies and the preaching. There is a need of people or the preachers to contextualize, to bring the message, the gospel message to the reality of what we are going through. It is the same in other faiths, even in Christians. So here I've given an example, and people can discover more that already, apart from what is in the Bible, for Catholics, Pope Francis has written Laudato Si and the Laudato Deum to call upon people around the world to take up this, guided by our faith, and underlining that the moral aspect should be at the center. It's no longer about business or the things that we see, or just considering it simple to be part of people who are causing this havoc to the environment and the communities, but for people to understand that the climate change, whatever we are doing, harming environment, is our sin of today. So having Laudato Si in Catholic and the Christians also working together, guided by the Bible, We have also Muslims who have come up with the Al-Mizan. It also orients them from Quran and the teaching of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you meet also other faith groups like Baha'i, they have also the teaching from Baha'u'llah. So each one of us belong to a faith. That is our power belongs. And therefore, guided by our faith, we are able to educate, to inform, to remind, and to engage with our people to take action. But when we are talking about leaders, who are leaders? Leaders are part of us, are in our communities, are in our churches, are in our temples. But also remember that our group, our faith, and the religion have structures. I would give an example. For example, in Kenya, we have a multi-sectoral platform where bishops and the imams and the other faith leaders come together and discuss on the matters, issues on good governance, on environments, and they are able to give guidance to leaders at national level. So this is an opportunity that we cannot really take like it's simple. It's something that we need really to build and strengthen. But now communities are the victims, especially indigenous communities or poor communities, are victims of all these climate crises that are happening. Therefore, the people of faith have mandate to give hope to the people in the communities. So this is how faith is strong in this and can play a double role of directing the administration and giving hope to people in the communities, of course, assisting in various ways, and the structures are there, programs are there, we can use them and be able to make this happen.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for that thorough answer. I'd like to invite back Lam, who will be speaking to us as the UN Child Advisor for the GC26. Welcome.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So firstly, thank you for allowing me to have the floor. So firstly, I want to thank Frederick for mentioning the GC26. So as a lot of you have mentioned already, like the sort of the collaboration we need in order to push this forward and how faith plays a big role in this. It's something that I can definitely, I wholeheartedly support and agree on, because as a lot of you have mentioned, that climate actions is what we really need, but then we face institutions, really large institutions, whether that's government or like international organizations, who try to put these barriers in a way to like kind of prevent us from moving forward to tackle climate change. And I wanted to reemphasize how, and that I agree with you guys, how collaboration and faith plays a big role in this, and how even despite all of these barriers against us, what is important is that we hold each other's hands, and with each other's faith, we kind of push back against these barriers on us. And this is what we really need from children and like even adults, to work together to be able to tackle climate change. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much for sharing and the amazing work. Indeed, it does take collective efforts, and our leaders also are mostly people of faith, and that can be an avenue of hope, an avenue and a platform for engagement. And therefore, it is a call for all of us to strengthen and be bold and continue to connect on different ways and finding similarities, and also striving always to build a connection that will be able to achieve the outcomes and the hope that we have. I encourage all of us to keep a lookout in the chat. Frederic has shared wonderful resources guiding us on how we can engage on matters regarding carbon bombs, and also how to engage as those who are interested in participating in both national and global and building intergenerational solidarity. We're also very thankful for Stephen for highlighting the Universal Periodic Review process, or the UPR process, and that takes place every 4 years in every country, and it is basically a way of taking stock of the state of human rights in our countries, and we can also engage in that process either through our national focal points, but we can also do it as civil society, and the link to that has also been shared in the chat. And Bob also has shared the experiences, and yes, we will. This is not the end of this conversation. Let us keep the conversation going. Particularly, do have a look at the UNEP Faith for Earth page on Instagram, on X, and they are using the hashtag Faith in Action, and they have been sharing live updates about this. We also have an ongoing spotlight series from the members of the Youth Council and also our partners who are speaking about key themes regarding human rights and also how that intersects with our faith and also intersects with our environmental protection endeavors. We also invite our guests to check out the Faith for Earth Youth Council page and interact with us and find ways in which you can engage with young people from all over the world of different faiths all coming together. I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for your time. Let's commit to take action guided by our faith to uphold the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Thank you so much and have a great evening.